Okay, basically, we're going to start. I actually want to get into a little bit more of the personal side with you. I see a lot of your posts on Facebook about against abuse.
Yes.
And a lot of it has to do with not the physical, but the other types of abuse, that whether you're in a relationship or just like in general. And I hate using the term bullying. To me, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's something you really believe in.
Yes.
That you are, now, like, people don't think too much about like psychological abuse, but that can actually do more damage than the physical can. Am I right?
It does. Actually, emotional abuse is much more damaging than physical abuse. That's what I've found. I think, actual scars heal quicker than emotional.
Okay. You can sit down for the rest of it. I had to get a little bit of the attitude when you walk, but
As I fall over, so graceful.
But you were saying about that the psychological and emotional abuse can do a lot more damage for a lot longer than the physical.
Yes, the scars last longer, and it takes a lot of effort and education to get through that.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by, education? Most people think, okay, look it up online, go to like a psychiatrist or something, but there's a lot more to it, to surviving that and getting through it, than just doing those basic things. Am I right?
There is. Actually, I go to Turning Point. There's a support group that I go to at Turning Point, where I can talk to other women who have been through similar situations. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes that actually makes me feel worse, because I hear these women who have been going through this even longer than I have, and they're still dealing with their ex-husbands ruining their lives, making sure they have no money, trying to make sure that they just end up with nothing. And I was lucky. I finally got to the point where I stopped really caring, and I just divorced my husband. I wanted alimony, I wanted, child support, I wanted certain things, and at some point it just got to be too much trouble to deal with the constant barrage of nonsense that I would have to put up with every time I dealt with them. And I just said, you know what? I don't care if I have nothing from you. I just want the divorce. And I finally just signed and accepted it. And since January, I have been divorced, and I'm so happy about that.
Okay. Now, in our society, unfortunately, even though we live in 2014, in our society, everybody thinks that it's always the male doing it to the female. But you do have cases where it's the exact opposite, where the guy tries to do everything for the female,
Yes.
and basically is put through the same thing. Am I right or am I wrong?
And that's exactly true. As I don't run into any men at the functions that I go to or the support groups, but I've dated somebody who had a wife who was currently schizophrenic and bipolar, and she used to torment him, threaten him with knives, threaten to kill him, went after his daughter with a knife, would stab things in the house, and all kinds of insane things that
Basically, right out of a horror movie.
Yeah, and it sucks because in the end, a lot of people that have been through similar things and haven't gone and gotten help and learned how to deal with it better, they just keep perpetuating unhealthy relationships over and over again because that's all they know. And it makes it really hard for them to ever find any happiness.
Okay. But yeah, like you say, I think that's something, like a lot of things that still exist in our world, that being one of them. It's time to drop it. It's time to drop the stereotypes. It's time to drop men have to be so tough, etc. I think do you agree with that? It's, a lot of things like prejudice, discrimination, a lot of things in general, it's just time to get over it.
There's a lot of things in this world that are very disappointing. Prejudice, the way society looks at abuse needs to change. If society doesn't change the way they look at abuse and realize that this is something that is so damaging to somebody, they just perpetuate this environment where abusive people can thrive, and the victims of the abuse, or the survivors in some cases, they end up killing them, but they have nowhere to go.
Or in some cases, the person actually kills themselves because they can't take it. And a lot of people probably don't realize that.
And a lot of people don't think about why people feel suicidal after going through something like that. And it's not because they have low self-esteem or anything like that. It's because they can't forgive themselves for not recognizing or realizing or leaving the situation before it got to the point where it destroyed them.
Or now, this is just from what I've learned. Sometimes they feel like that they've tried the legal system, they've tried the separating, and some of them think, okay, this is my last option. This is the only way I can get out of this.
Exactly. Sometimes they torment you to the point where you feel there's no option other than removing yourself from their path in whatever way you can think of. Like if you can't afford to physically get out of their path, that's an option that would come to somebody's head when they've been through that.
Okay. So, but basically, it's like I said, it seems like just in our world, it's like, it's really, especially things like abuse, it's time, even for guys, like I said, where it's like, okay, guys are human beings too, So, now, there's other things I've seen in your posts on Facebook that you are truly passionate about and believe in. It's not just about the abuse.
Yeah.
There's other topics in this world that are things in our country, in this world, that are really screwed up, that you really believe in, and you're really fighting to change and make a difference.
Yes, and I find like politically, I tend to side more with the Democrats. However, I don't really care if it's Democrats or Republicans.
You're more of an independent.
Yeah, it's about people and what can we do to make people's lives better in this country.
You just freaked me out because you and I share the same political views. I actually, back when the primaries, everybody's like, go out to vote, go out to vote. Well, I forgot. I was an independent. I can't vote in a primary. And I actually posted on Facebook. I actually had somebody over on the east side of Allentown take me to the polling place because I know where it showed on Google Maps was nowhere near where it was. And when I went in there, they said, well, they actually called up the main headquarters and said, well, you're an independent, you're not party affiliated, you can't vote. And I actually post on Facebook, I'm like, okay, go out to vote, but yet the people who think that it's time that we drop this two-party system, basically we're screwed and we have no say in this in a primary election.
Yeah.
And I said, it's time to drop it.
Well, I guess for primaries you do have to vote within your party.
Yeah.
Party that may be. I guess if there was an independent party, that would be. But you don't get to.
Yeah, but it's almost like time to drop the two-party system, and like you said, just basically vote for the person you think is going to do the best job. Forget about the labels, essentially.
And even when you vote for the person you think is going to do the best job, if the Senate and Congress are set up in a way that they can stop them, they will. I spent hours and hours volunteering for Obama back when he first came out. When I saw him speak at the Democratic National Convention, before he ever announced he was going to run for president, I think it was during Gore's campaign.
Okay.
Whatever year that, I think it was 2000. I'm not sure. But when I saw that interview, or that speech that he made, I looked at it and I said, that guy's going to be our next president.
Okay.
He had never said he was going to run. I said, he needs to run for president. And next thing you know, one day I see that he has now announced he's running for president. And I put effort and time and, my soul into trying to get him elected because I believed in what he was talking about.
Yeah, but a lot of people feel, like everybody complains about Obama now, and it's like, okay, what they don't realize is Obama still has to get almost everything through Congress.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
Yeah, they stop him every time they can. And it's been a nightmare. Like, nobody wants to work with them because they want things their way.
Like Clinton's second term, where you had a Democratic president and Republican Congress. As soon as everybody saw that, it's like, okay, well, we're going to be on autopilot for the next 4 years, essentially. So in addition to politics, what are some of the areas that you feel strongly about? This is so people can get to know a more personal side of you.
I feel strongly about any kind of oppression. I don't feel that anybody should be oppressed. I don't feel that people should judge people based on their monetary status, their color, their skin, their personal beliefs. Religion. I think people should be free to feel however they feel about whatever religion they want.
Right.
Sometimes Christians upset me because they are so adamant about their way being the only way, and they're so down on everybody else. I find that Christians can be some of the most judgmental people I've ever met in my life.
I was born and raised Roman Catholic, 13 years of Catholic school, the whole 9 yards, and I stopped believing in my early 20s.
Yeah.
Because I looked at it from the outside in, it's like, hold it. You know.
I don't even know what my religious affiliation is. I've been baptized and accepted Jesus a couple of times. However,
Born again part 2, born again part 3, born again, the sequel.
I know, it's a little silly.
And yes, if people get pissed off at me for saying it that way, I really don't care.
But I've also, I've looked into Native American shamanism, Celtic Wiccanism, all kinds of different stuff. I like to read about things and I like to have knowledge, but I kind of just believe that there is a higher power that is up there.
Agnostic, essentially, where you believe in a higher power, you just don't believe in.
I just don't know what name to give it.
Yeah, and you don't believe in like
I believe that nature and the things that whoever created this great place gave us should be tended to and not ruined and destroyed.
Okay. I want to hit on a couple of hot, controversial topics, which some of them I agree with, some of them I posted on Facebook and got blasted for. As far as everyone like going saying, well, everything has to go all natural, everything has to go organic. Forget about the genetically modified food and everything. To me, that's saying, okay, we're going to try and blast the entire species back to the Stone Age versus, you know what, maybe we're setting ourselves up for the next stage of our evolution and possibly to better adapt to eventually decades down the road when we would set foot on Mars. That's the way I see it, and I get, and a lot of people are like, oh, let's go all organic and everything else, but it's like, okay, the changes made to our body might be helping our evolution to when we do reach the stars.
I kind of disagree with that because I do believe people were healthier when they lived in a way where there wasn't grocery stores and genetically modified food and.
But there were still mass plagues and everything back then.
Well, and that was taken care of not really through coming up with processed food, but through coming up with vaccines. So I do try to eat mostly organic or at least whole grain stuff. I try to eat stuff that either comes from the ground or was alive. So chickens, eggs, vegetables, anything that's been modified or processed, I really try to avoid. Fat-free stuff that they come out with nowadays. They add all kinds of garbage to them to make it fat-free and still tasty.
Diet soda is one of the best-selling products on the market.
Yeah, and I used to drink soda. I used to drink a 2-liter bottle of soda every day.
I burned through too. Yeah.
Which I find it just makes me feel better. I feel less bloated. I feel more full and more satiated.
But and here's one of the arguments I used against this is by all these people, feeling this way, that people like myself that prefer the processed chemically loaded food because my body has adapted to it, and when I eat natural and organic for a while now, my immune system goes down because I'm so used to the chemicals in the processed food that in a way they're trying to force everyone to go that direction instead of at least letting people have the choice between, do you want to eat healthy or do you want to eat this way? It almost seems like that, like they're trying. So, if you from that angle, do you are you kind of like in the middle about it, or do you still support?
But I still feel that everybody should have choices on everything. I don't think choices should be taken away from anybody. That's something that I feel very strongly about. I may not agree with the choices, but I certainly agree that you have the right to have them and to feel however you feel. I want to believe that or really want to convince me, maybe another thing. I may not want to hear
Yeah.
Or, you know, I may tell you, you know.
Drop the
I don't
subject
agree.
real quick. Yeah, just drop the subject real quick.
Yeah. However, you certainly have your right to feel how you feel. I don't like people that want their opinions pushed on everybody, and if you don't agree with their opinions, they think there's something wrong with you. Those kind of people really bother me.
Okay. So anything else you want to talk about before we get into another part you're not expecting?
You know, just I love this area. I used to sit down here and write songs when I was in my 20s. I lived right on this street.
You look like you're still in your 20s.
Thank you. That was about 27 years ago.
Age is a number.
I guess I age well. I'm like a fine wine.
Age is. People say about getting older, age is just a number. It depends on how well you keep your body. And, you know, I mean, I'm 43, and the amount that I walk, I have people like in their 20s like, we couldn't do that. It's like, why not? You know, so yeah,
my crazy ex-boyfriend used to walk for miles when he was homeless.
well, it's like I was up at the Allentown Library, and I had to go over to Landon to pick up a bus pass that I won. And I looked at I looked up on Google Maps, 1.3 miles walking. I got there, I'm like, there's no way that was even close to 1.3 miles. You know, so it's, but
you do what you got to do, and you get used to it.
yeah. So now I want to go back, and I apologize if this has been a sensitive subject, and in going with it. What if you could say something to anybody who, and I don't want to use the word victim. Okay, because to me the word victim is a survivor of abuse. I prefer to use that versus the word victim because to me victim means that you're completely helpless and powerless and can't do anything. And survivor means that, guess what? I've found a way. I'm trying.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the thing is, until you do realize that there's a problem, you are a victim, and you'll stay a victim until you realize that the things that they're doing are wrong. But I would have to say to anybody that's experiencing emotional violence or emotional bullying, workplace bullying, anything like that, is to stick up for yourself as best you can, and go seek help through education or whatever it might be, especially for domestic violence. If you're being abused, call somebody, tell somebody. A lot of times your friends and family are not the people to tell because they will blame you. And that's the problem with society, is that when people have been abused and they didn't leave fast enough for their family or their friends, they start to look at them differently and they start to treat them differently. And that's how you become a victim. Because not only are you being victimized by the abuser, but now you're being victimized by the other people in your life that were supposed to care about you and love you. So you have to look outside of your circle of friends, and a great place to turn is Turning Point. They're a local organization that helps domestic violence victims become survivors.
Crime Victims Council of the Lehigh Valley is a great place that, especially if you reported the domestic violence and nothing was really done. I'm familiar with the Crime Victims Council of Lehigh Valley.
Yep, and they also help with compensation if somebody has caused financial problems, but it has to have happened during whatever the assault or incident was.
Right.
So that's where I ran into problems.
Okay.
My ex-boyfriend, who was crazy, the things that he put me through were horrendous. I went to the Crime Victims Council and realized that I couldn't get any help with any of the financial burden that he put on me because it didn't happen during any of the incidents that I reported.
Okay.
So that's another thing. The rules and things have to change to make them better for victims of abuse. And society has to change the way they look at it to empower women to stop putting up with that.
And not only that, but also men to make them realize that, guess what, you're a human being, and forget about what society says about you're supposed to hide everything, you're supposed to be so strong. You gotta go for help, and even if you think it'll make you look bad in the eyes of your friends, the most important thing is surviving this.
Yeah.
Because I remember I told you right before I came back, I was attacked by two people who I thought were friends who were drug addicts down in North Carolina. And I had a friend of mine who owned a business who said, you have to go to the cops. But I knew I had to spend a week on the street. And I was so terrified. I didn't know how many people they knew that when I went down one night, okay, well, one of their friends is going to come along and kill me.
Yeah.
And I never reported it.
Yeah.
And that's what they were counting on.
That's what happens is people don't report it, and the silence is what perpetuates more violence. And it always gets worse. It'll start out emotional. Eventually it'll be little physical things. And from my experience in the abusive relationships I have been in, it always ends up getting worse and escalating and escalating and escalating to the point where you really end up being feared for your life.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I want to stop here and just I want to take a quick break, and I just thought of something very important that we haven't really touched on, because we've actually talked about the abuse itself and while it's going on. But what I want to actually talk to you about is a little bit of the long term, how even 5 years you could have a flashback, or you could see somebody 5 years from now that might look like that person, and then you just like go back to that. So I'm going to take a little bit of break. If you don't mind, I want to touch on that before we wind it out.